Part 1. The Garden and the Sky. A story of rising beyond toxic control. Storytime by T. Santoro. Welcome to this powerful story about the unseen reality of toxic control. You'll witness how an unsuspecting soul can fall into the grip of a manipulator. How charm becomes control. This story is not just about exposure. It's about self-awareness. About finding your voice when it's been buried. It's about what to do the moment you awaken to the truth. How to survive. How to rise. And how to free yourself from anyone who's ever tried to control your spirit. This is a story of reclaiming your soul and remembering who you truly are. The Garden and the Sky reveals the subtle yet powerful ways manipulation can take root and how courage begins when clarity enters. Sometimes we don't see the control while we're in it. It can look like love, feel like protection, but slowly it silences the self. Some call it sweet poison, disguised as care, cloaked in charm, eroding your truth. This story is not based on one life, but it may reflect pieces of many. It is not therapy. It is storytelling with heart, with honesty, and with the belief that healing begins when we allow ourselves to see clearly. Our story begins on the day Soul arrived in a town called Wheatfield. It looked like something off a postcard. Rusted windmills, one church steeple, and a single stoplight that blinked red through the night. People waved here, from porches, from trucks, from across fields of lush crops. They didn't know Soul yet, but they still smiled. He hadn't come looking for love, but love found its way to the corner table. It happened on the third day, just before sunset. The coffee shop windows caught the last light, and the room filled with gold. The air shimmered, soft, sacred still. And in that glow, Soul saw someone standing there, backlit haloed, radiant in a way that made everything else fall away. Something in Soul whispered, "The Golden One." It wasn't a name, not yet. Just a feeling, a knowing, a title wrapped in warmth before the truth had a chance to speak. Then came the glance, held just long enough to feel intentional. Then words. Easy, light, like sunlight through lace curtains. The Golden One spoke with familiarity, as though every page of Soul's story was already known. Even the ones never spoken. "You're not from here, are you?" came the question, with a smile that leaned in like a secret. Soul laughed, caught off guard. "Is it that obvious?" The smile widened, only in the best way. From that moment, something opened. Late-night talks over coffee. Texts that felt like lifelines. Long walks where time softened around their footsteps. Soul felt seen, heard, chosen. "You feel like home," the Golden One whispered one evening, as fireflies danced just outside the screen door. And just like that, Soul wasn't just new in town. Soul was loved. Chapter 1. The Garden of Whispers. At first, it was small things. A glance that lingered too long with disapproval. A shift in tone, so slight it could be dismissed. A teasing comment that didn't quite feel like a joke. "You're too sensitive. I didn't mean it like that. Don't take everything so personally." Soul began to wonder, was it me? Was I overthinking? Where there was once warmth, there were now corrections. Compliments faded. Silence crept in. But the affection didn't vanish. It became conditional. Earned, calculated. "That shirt's a bit much, don't you think? Maybe don't talk so much next time. You're lucky I'm patient with you." In public, everything was polite. Smiles came easy. The town adored the Golden One. Always charming, always helpful. No one questioned the dynamic. And if Soul did, why are you trying to ruin things? You always do this. Everybody loves me. The garden, once soft, free, safe, now held thorns in all the places Soul used to rest. There were no bruises to point to. No recordings of the way the air went cold after a question. But the change was real, not loud, but quietly consuming. Something in Soul pulled inward. as if the parts that once held him up had learned to hide to survive. And Soul felt it. Not in words, not in wounds. Just something real inside him, trying to tell him something. Chapter 2. The Wind Turns Cold. The first real shift wasn't loud. It came in the form of absence. Words withheld, affection rationed, warmth locked behind a wall. Soul was no longer allowed to climb. "You've been difficult lately. You know that, right?" That was the pattern now. The wound followed by blame. Soul was both the broken glass and the one who'd dropped it. The town still smiled, still waved, still adored the Golden One. And when Soul tried to speak up, "You really think anyone would believe you over me?" Then came the silence. Then the distance. Then the shame. Old connections began to fade. Neighbors offered polite smiles, but something in them had shifted, and Soul could feel it. The Golden One was already ahead, laying groundwork, controlling the story, painting Soul as the problem. One night, Soul stood at the window, looking out across the fields. And for a moment, the reflection in the glass looked more like a stranger than someone he recognized. Chapter 3. Something breaks open. The night had all the ingredients of warmth. Friends, neighbors, soft lighting, shared dishes, old records humming low in the background. Soul, always helping out, moved through the kitchen with ease, refilling glasses, laughing when the moment asked for it. Janine, the neighbor from up the road, was there, carrying a light spirit about her. A few others from town had gathered too, trading stories in the soft hum of conversation. It was a cozy evening, the kind where you forget to check the time. And, of course, the Golden One. Radiant, relaxed, holding the center of the room with ease. The conversation drifted to gardens. Janine beamed. "My sage is doing amazing this year. It's really taken off." The Golden One leaned back, swirling the wine. Soul said, "It's drowning." The words dropped like silverware onto tile. "Said you overwater it, and it's choking out everything else." The room shifted. Janine's smile held a second too long. "Well, that's one opinion," Janine said gently. But her hand moved off her glass. The Golden One laughed. "It was just a private observation. You know, garden pillow talk." A few people chuckled. Not loudly, not comfortably. The kind of laugh people offer when they're unsure what just happened. Soul said nothing, just looked down at the plate. Not because of the sage, not even the room, but because a private moment had been exposed, twisted into something it was never meant to be. Not just for Soul, but for Janine too. And in truth, it was never about the plants. Soul paused near the window. Outside, the world looked soft, ordinary. But something inside felt off. This isn't love. This is something else wearing love's clothes. The laughter from the gathering rose again in the background. Light, scattered, unknowing. But the view had changed. And so had Soul. Chapter 4. The Quiet Rebellion. Soul didn't speak on the walk home. The Golden One filled the space. According to the Golden One, Soul was reading too much into things. It wasn't a big deal. People laugh when they're comfortable. "You really think everything's about you?" Always so sensitive. "It's exhausting." Soul nodded. Slowly. Not in agreement. Just not now. The next morning, while reaching for a sweater, Soul bumped into a forgotten box. Inside were old photos, a card, a journal. Soul opened a blank page and began to write. "I remember who I am. I remember being seen, not studied. I remember how it felt to trust my own voice." The Golden One passed through the room with coffee in hand. "Writing again?" Soul looked up, calm, steady. Some things are worth remembering. That afternoon, Soul walked through town. Janine stepped down from her porch. "For what it's worth," she said softly. "I always appreciated your garden advice." Soul looked at her, not with surprise, but with something quieter. Something deeper. It was subtle, but Janine saw it. A flicker, a shift, like truth emerging, and until now, no one had chosen to notice. He said nothing, but in that look, Janine saw it clearly. A mask of illusion painted on Soul by the Golden One was now slipping. And for Soul, it was an awakening. He thought to himself, "Thank you for seeing what so many refused to." Chapter 5: The Shift in the Room. The Golden One noticed. Soul no longer filled silences. No longer had to explain his actions. A comment about breakfast being cold. Soul said nothing. An accusation disguised as concern. Soul kept reading. "Not everything needs to be talked about," came the reply. "Some things are just seen." The Golden One laughed. "Too loud. There you go again. Speaking in riddles." Soul smiled. But not the old smile. This one didn't ask for approval. Later that day, while Soul trimmed the hedges, the Golden One called out, "Still living the dream?" Soul wiped a brow and answered, "Waking up feels better." The smile froze for just a beat too long. That night, Soul stood beneath a sky that didn't demand anything. No fear. No apology. Just the stillness of peace. Chapter 6: The Fracture Beneath the Smile. The Golden One pressed harder. "You've changed. Don't tell me this is your way of getting back at me. Not everything is about you. You do realize you are not nearly as easy to love as you imagine." Soul didn't blink. He just opened the front door. Not to leave, just to let the wind in. "I never needed to be easy to love," came the reply. "I just needed it to be real." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was Soul's. Chapter 7: The First Light. Soul no longer walked on eggshells. Just walked. Past Janine's porch. Past streets that once felt heavy. Now they were just streets again. The Golden One still poked, still tested. But Soul had stopped reacting. Peace became the new rebellion. In the shed, an old bike. Rusted, but fixable. Soul repaired it, slowly, without needing to prove anything. Then rode it down the gravel path. Not to escape, but to remember. This is who I was. This is who I am. This is who I get to be again. Chapter 8: The Leaving. Soul didn't make a scene. No bags were thrown. No note left behind. The Golden One had already rewritten the story. Spinning Soul as unstable, selfish, ungrateful. Friends went quiet. Family stepped back. Only Janine saw the truth, and that was enough. Soul left with peace, with dignity, with no need to defend what was never broken. The gravel crunched beneath the tires. The sun broke through the trees. Chapter 9: The Place Between. Soul drove to the next town, a place called Silver Creek. It didn't take long before he spotted a small cottage tucked just off the road. It wasn't much. Just a small patch of workable soil, a few stubborn weeds, and an inviting view. A handwritten sign in the window read, "For rent." This could be home. Soul finalized the rental agreement. And just then, he felt it. Home. There was no welcome committee. No friends waiting with open arms. Just a small cottage with windows that faced the morning light. Soul didn't need more. No stories twisted behind closed doors. Just quiet. Stillness and peace. The first days passed like deep fog was lifting. Soul didn't rush to unpack. The suitcase stayed half-zipped by the door. His journal sat nearby but untouched. Not yet ready to hold this new chapter. The neighbors waved but didn't ask questions. That was the kindness of this place. No one had heard the story. No one was carrying someone else's version of Soul. Chapter 10: The Discovery. One morning, barefoot in the grass, Soul watched a bird land on the front porch railing. No reason, no message. Just presence. Soul felt it. This is the beginning of something that does not need an explanation. He began to move freely in his thoughts. The phone stayed off more than on. The silence wasn't empty. It was intact. There were no questions about who was upset. No careful edits of tone. No scanning for approval. Just stillness and the smallest, most sacred thought. I count. My thoughts and perceptions count. I am allowed to exist exactly as I am. Later that afternoon, Soul found a stack of old linens in a wooden chest near the back wall. Folded, faded, washed soft by time. There was no need to rearrange the room. But Soul did anyway, just because it felt good to make a space. There was no spiritual awakening, just a quiet knowing, a song hummed without explanation. The taste of toast with nothing on it. Peace didn't return like a guest. Peace returned like it had never left, just grown quiet. Waiting. Soul began writing again. Not about the past. Not even about healing. Just observations. The way my thoughts are free to flow. How basil reaches toward the light without apology. The rhythm of breath when nothing needs fixing. Some days, the words of the golden one still echoed through Soul, but now, even those memories had started to shift. They no longer felt weaponized. Soul didn't need to understand it all. Didn't need to tell anyone. Didn't even need to name it. His thoughts had shifted. A feeling of peace was settling in. This was his new rhythm now. Chapter 11. What the Soil Remembers. Soul stood barefoot on the back porch, a cup of tea in his hands. He looked out, past the porch, past the stillness. This land could hold something. It wasn't much, but it was something. Perhaps not a full garden, but maybe a few things. Something resilient. Something that wouldn't need to impress. Just something real. Soul went to the local nursery. No one asked where he came from. No one tried to rewrite the story. The woman behind the counter simply smiled. "They all love light," she said, handing over a few packets of seeds. Peppermint among them. Soul went home to plant the seeds. The gardening was quiet. Simple. Steady. Hands in the earth. Knees to the ground. No need for metaphors. Just dirt. Just sunlight. Just breath. The garden wasn't grown for praise. It wasn't shaped for perfection. It wasn't proof of anything. It was just something coming to life, and that was enough. The marigolds bloomed first. Small bursts of fire tucked into the corners. Then came the basil. Then the peppermint. Soul sat near the garden most evenings, sometimes writing, sometimes just watching the shadows shift across the soil. The silence no longer felt empty. He caught his reflection in a water droplet on a basil leaf, and smiled without flinching. I don't have to explain myself anymore, he thought. I can just be me. This new freedom moved through him like a breeze. He gave no more energy to friends who vanished, to family who never asked, not even to the version of himself that once begged for clarity. Thriving didn't come with applause. It came with the stillness of peace. Chapter 12. I am who I am. Somewhere inside the breeze, a memory floated past. The voice of the golden one, distorted and distant. You're not as easy to love as you think you are. Soul smiled, softly, fully. I am easy to love. I'm just finally loving in the right direction. Later that night, still sitting beside the garden, with a journal on one knee and stars overhead, Soul wrote just one sentence. I made it. And beneath that, no one gets to rewrite me. Continue along with us in the next story, as Soul's journey deepens. An awakening rising from the roots of toxic control, into the freedom to love again, to trust yourself, and to rediscover the person you were always meant to be. See you in the stillness. If this story spoke to you, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and remember to click the bell so you always hear a new story. And if you know someone who could use this message, share it with them. Because sometimes, a simple story is all it takes to spark something real.